All right, we are here for emerging technology and magic, which means we are bound to have some kind of a unicorn attack which causes Wi-Fi failure. So if anybody fades in or out, that's the reason. It's totally on purpose. My name is Michaelbrent Collings. We are going to go around and introduce everybody, and then we'll dive right in. Drea, can you introduce us to yourself?
I'm Drea Griffin. I am a sword-swinging sci-fi fantasy artist and author. I am also an ADHD Slytherin, so I have my fingers in many pies and have yet to actually really finish anything. But I love concept design and coming up with magic systems and stuff, so this should be good. I mix tech and magic a lot in my stories.
That is a prolonged smile from Michaelbrent, so I'm imagining that he's frozen.
The unicorns have come already.
They already have, yes.
Mike, what about you?
All right. My name is Mike Thayer. I am an author of middle grade fantasy. Got my 3 books right there from the Epic Adventures of the Techno Wizard series. And those are self-published. And then I have a book. I have a printout of the cover. That's as much as I have to show you here. This one's traditionally published from Macmillan in June, called The Double Life of Danny Day, about a 6th grade boy who lives every day twice. And I am also an engineer by day, so kind of cover the gamut there.
And Natalie.
Yeah. So my first novel is actually kind of a gas lamp historical romance mystery, but I am working on a sci-fi fantasy where there's a lot of the magic helps with the way that the technology works and is formed, and I love magic systems. I also work at a planetarium and space center in Pleasant Grove, and so I spend a lot of time talking about technology and learning about space and figuring out how that works. But also I make up stories about fake people in my head, so reality and fakeality at the same time. So.
Fake
and Natalie.
Hashtag for the panel. Hashtag fakeality. All right. We, excuse me, we are going to be having some fun here. I'll introduce myself. My name is Michaelbrent Collings. I'm an internationally best-selling indie author. I write in every genre possible. I'm best known for horror, but I do a ton of sci-fi fantasy, and I mix horror into those sometimes as well. That said, I'm the moderator, so I'm going to mostly shut up and let these smart people talk. And we're going to lead off. This is all about mixing. Oh, and if I look off to the side, I'm not bored. I'm like gathering my thoughts for the epicness of what's about to happen with these people. This is all about magic and technology and how they function together. So my first question is, why bother? I mean, we have science fiction, we have fantasy. They're perfectly serviceable. No one ever went to J.R.R. Tolkien and was like, can you add a spaceship? So why would we bother doing that? Let's hear from Mike first.
Sure. I think this quote's going to get thrown out, so I'll just throw it out early. But I think everyone's heard the, Arthur C. Clarke, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And so they kind of are the same a little bit anyway. When you think about magic and technology. In fact, I was thinking, like, when I hear that quote, I think of like Star Wars, and I think of Star Trek and spaceships and warp speed and being up in the but I think it's actually more present than that. Like, if you look, we kind of live in a society where we have and interact constantly with sufficiently advanced technology that's basically magic. Like, my webcam might as well be like some relic that I stole from some goblin, because I don't understand how it works. It might as well be magic. Like, for some reason, because they put the right materials together and shot electricity into it, you can see what I'm doing in my home office anywhere on the planet. And so we kind of already live in a place that's kind of crazy and magical. And so I think both of them are trying to capture wonder. So whether you do it by like truly magical means, or whether you do it by try to explain that magic by technology, I think you're still trying to go after something that is wondrous. That's the emotion I think that the genre science fiction and fantasy is trying to capture. So I think you can go about it different ways, and I think melding them together is a way to create some very interesting solutions when you have like a magical solution to a technical problem or a technical solution to a magical problem. I think you can come with a lot of really, really cool story elements. And that is kind of the basis. I mean, the epic adventures of the Techno Wizard is about a kid who gets transported to a different world but still has cell phone signal back to Earth. And so his phone, they think it's an oracle, right? Because he can ask it questions and it gives him magic answers out of the sky. And he has this whole backpack full of like drones and listening devices. And so he tries to convince everybody that he's basically a wizard. So he calls himself the Techno Wizard. And I always thought that's really, really interesting, is if we went back in time and had to sort of explain a webcam. I mean, I can't even explain a webcam to you right now. Like if we had to explain that to someone from the 1500s or from, 1,000 years ago. And so that sort of element of wonder, I think, is what you're trying to go for, whether it's magic or it's technology.
Yeah, that's good.
We lost Michaelbrent.
Michaelbrent has left us.
Unicorns once again.
The unicorns got him.
I mean, the thing is why do we limit ourselves? Like, why not have magic and technology? Because I mean, again, you were saying like some of this stuff it's unexplainable, and when you look at Star Trek and Star Wars and things like that, the technology that's there, I mean, it's not technology that we actually have, and most sci-fi has technology that we don't actually have because we think it's cool and whatnot. It has a technological explanation, but I couldn't tell you how my laptop works. It is basically my brother, he's a programmer, and he told me just a couple of weeks ago, I was like, isn't it weird how we took rocks and we taught them how to,
yeah, no kidding.
how to think. We taught rocks how to think, and that's what computers are basically.
Yeah, it's nuts. Like I'm astounded. I'm floored at the even simple technology. But like if you think about it, there's magical forces around us all. We think of magnetism. Magnetism is full-blown magic. It's like we can't see it, we can sense it, and then we incorporate this basically magical force into objects. And sometimes it's toys. Like think of an MRI. Well, magnets are basically like metal, and you stick the metal together. But if it's like a really strong force, and you stick a human inside of it, and then you align his protons, and you take like radio frequencies, and like pull, then you can see inside of it. Like, what? What are you talking about? Like, so when you talk about like trying to make a story from those elements, is like take that magical force and just incorporate it into industry, into daily life, because that's what we have done. Right? We've incorporated these magical forces into our tools and our technology and our society. And you would do the exact same thing if actual magic did exist, because it kind of does.
Well, I mean, if you watch Legend of Korra, I mean, like from Avatar: The Last Airbender, the way that they use their magic systems in their daily life in that way.
Yeah.
And
if you look at like soft, really, really super soft sci-fi, like there are things that like Star Trek, Star Wars, it's like, well, a lot of that is potentially possible, maybe. And then you get into the super soft sci-fi where it's like, that may or may not actually be possible depending on physics, no matter how technologically advanced you get. But it's still cool and it's in space. So is it sci-fi? Is it magic? At that point.
Is it both?
Both.
Yeah, and I do like to think of like, going back, like, is there a technological solution to a magical problem or a magical problem to a technological solution? Like, if we were to we have this weird thought that like, if a society has magic, then their technology needs to be at medieval level technology. I don't know why our brains are stuck there, but like, it would not just stay at medieval level technology if there was magic. Right? If there was magic, you would use the magic for more than to fight monsters with the magic, right? You would use it to increase the, quality of living and the standard of living. You would use it like we use any technology. You would use it to have power over other people. You would use it to improve your status in society. And I mean,
if the magic's so awesome, why isn't it making the life like sci-fi level awesome?
Right. Yeah, you're not just stuck at medieval Europe when you come up with magic. So that's like, if you're coming up with a story, I would encourage people to think about that. Like, how would it really change society? Because in Techno Wizard, one of the things I did is when the kid comes over, there actually is real magic in society that kind of like permeates the world. And one of the things that's weird with this kid, he has this techno magic, but he also, if he touches actual magic, he deletes it. And so he is very, very different than everybody else. And so it makes him public enemy number one when he shows up, because the person who has the most magic is this evil sort of wizard emperor who has a magic tax on everybody. And if they get too much magic, then they have to sort of like tax it all the way up to him. So he controls the vast majority of the magical force. And now there's a kid who can delete magic. And so who does that put out? That puts out the wizard emperor. He's now a threat. And so for me, the stories always take place in the cracks. Like, if there was a technological breakthrough in a magical society, or a magical breakthrough in a technological society, who would it help and who would it hurt? Who would be threatened by it and who would be happy about it? And that's your story, right? So you're trying to think of like how to meld them together. Just think of, I think, A, what are all the ripple effects of having magic or a technology? And then B, who are those people that would be helped by that, and who are the people that would be threatened and hurt by that? And then there's your story.
I think there's also thinking about like cost benefit of things. Like if the magic is super hard to do, then technology will probably surpass the magic. But if the magic is super easy to do, then why not have everything be magic based instead of tech based?
I mean, magic and tech both have a level of complexity and difficulty to them. I mean, I, again, don't know how my computer works. I don't know how to put one together and whatnot. And so I feel like, again, it's like, you know, deciding who, like, if you're going to dedicate your life to it. I think Onward, the Pixar movie, has a very interesting take on technology versus magic, saying that magic is so much harder than technology. And I think part of it is that with magic, you have to have a wizard around all the time to turn your lights on and off. Which, you know, job security, fantastic. But
until
with technology,
it's a light bulb.
Yeah, and then someone invents the light bulb, and then all of a sudden you have light that you can control without having to pay the wizard. Well, actually, you do pay the wizard in electricity bills,
but in a way you do. Yeah.
You don't have to have the wizard physically there turning the lights on and off for you.
Yeah, I think if you had a society that had both, I don't think they would even differentiate them.
Yeah.
Like, we have them differently in our mind, but again, like, think of magnetism. Magnetism is magic. Like, it's full-blown earth magic. And we just accepted it a long time ago that this is how this stuff operates and functions. And then we just incorporated it seamlessly into industrial applications and medical applications and toys and whatever else, right? And we don't even think about it anymore. And so I think if there truly was both of those, then I think people wouldn't see them as two separate things. They would just see, oh, there's a gap here that needs to be filled by magic in this piece of technology, and so the magic does it, or vice versa, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think even in a more like that, I think that's interesting, and that's an interesting setup. I think a more interesting setup could be like a discovery or a breakthrough, like a magical step change in what people can do with magic, or a technological step change. And then again, what are the ripple effects of all of that?
And you can play with like, is it the electrical branch of magic and then the like spiritual branch of magic, or is it all just magic and like they have no idea what electricity does because they rely on magic so much, so it's this other strange thing? There's a lot you can play with there.
I think it's interesting that in like a lot of magic systems, how they're based off of the elements and off of things that are natural. Because, I mean, when you do think about, magnetism is natural. Electricity is natural. We make it unnaturally too, but we make magnets unnaturally too. Fire, water, earth, all of that stuff. Like when you get down to it, just the fact that we're able to do cool stuff with the stuff around us and make it, make one thing into another. I mean, it really is if you bring it down to the base level, it could be seen as magic. Again, going back to the, technology, if it's advanced enough, is basically magic.
Have access to the moderator's feed questions, and one of them is we've been talking a lot about how they can complement each other and how they blend together so well. What are ways that they contrast, that they might work against each other?
Yeah, I think magic is seen as like it's not explainable in a way. And even though, like we've mentioned, that it's hard for us to even explain simple technology, it can be explained to a certain extent. And so maybe magic is seen as, which is odd because there was a time when technology was kind of seen as bad. And it took, a lot to convince the world that, rational thinking should be something we should pursue. But you could pit the sort of the two different ideologies against each other. Because maybe if there was like a very pure form of magic, there would be purists with that magic. We've seen this with like religious zealots, because religion in a way is like, we talk about like, oh man, it'd be so crazy if there was a society with both magic and technology. But it's like, that's exactly what we have right now. If you're a religious person, you believe in magic, like essentially, right? Anytime you take the stairs 2 at a time coming out of the basement, you're believing in magic, right? Because you think there's some boogeyman in the I turned on the lights, so I better like hurt. Like there's a little bit inside of us that can't just go like, yeah, that's hogwash. That's ridiculous. There's no monster downstairs. But like anytime we're superstitious about anything, that's a belief in magic. So we meld these things together in our lives all the time. And so I think if you can pit maybe the two sides against each other, and one thinks the other one's ridiculous or thinks it's not pure. Again, I think you got to see where who is dispossessed by something, who is put out by something. Like the story is always in the cracks. The story is in the people that are put off, that are put down by something. So maybe magic is in control and technology is trying to rise up through it, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Or you got like your organic, all natural magic and your processed technology magic.
Right.
Sort of a thing.
Yeah, and one can be explained. No, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing.
Okay. So, let's see.
I mean, what is less like this is a bit meta, like above the like when you're writing the books, because with technology I feel like you have to really explain how something works. I mean, not like exactly, but like for instance, there is some sort of technobabbly way of explaining how the technology works. Not saying that there isn't a technobabbly way for magic, but for instance, in the sci-fi fantasy I'm working on, I was really wanting to have like science-based warp technology, like really, down to different theories and whatnot. But, when it gets down to it, it's like, okay, well, how are we going to jump from here to there? And so I figured out all these theories, did all of this research, and then decided, you know what, there's a magic system involved in this because it's sci-fi fantasy. Let's say that this is the theory, and they didn't have the technology to get from here to there, but they can use magic to get from here to there. And so the theory is sound, but they use magic. And so I feel like, in a way, using magic almost gives you a pass to do whatever you want, but like at the same time, you don't want to be lazy about it. And so that can be kind of like, with technology, you kind of have to, with magic, you can sometimes say, okay, well, that's just magic. And, you're going to take that, what is it, layer of disbelief?
Suspension of disbelief.
Suspension of disbelief, and you're going to shove it down their throat, and you're going to say, okay, just take it. But with technology, you kind of have to be a little bit more. And so there's a toss-up.
Yeah, people expect technology to make sense, whereas magic gets a pass.
Yeah.
And I think where magic, you got to be careful with that, because magic could be seen as it could be seen as Deus Ex Machina, no pun intended to the technology. But I think what you have to replace that with is give magic a cost. So if you're going to use magic as that like, well, crud, I can't really explain this technologically, so I'm going to bridge the gap with magic because I can't figure out a technological way that this will work. Some people could be like, oh, geez, well, that's just Deus Ex Machina. But if you just give it a cost and maybe you give it a rule, then I think you get around a lot of that. So you
Exactly.
don't, it's not seen as a cop out, like, okay, I'll just paint it over with a bit of magic and then move on. I know some people, there's the whole Brandon Sanderson laws of magic, and I'm sure there's been panels on it before.
yeah.
I'm much more like a hard magic kind of guy, being an engineer, but fully appreciate the wonder side of magic. But I've always treated magic in the magic systems that I create in the books, whether it's something big and epic like this, or something magical realism. Like the 2 books I've worked on is A Kid Lives Every Day Twice. That's Danny Doubleday. And then the next book I'm coming out with, a girl gets the ability to steal people's talents for a day through touching an object that they use their talent through. So there's a magic there as well in a magic system, but I like it when magic is just kind of an extension of our natural laws of physics. And sometimes those things are kind of goofy and hard to explain. Our natural physical laws are hard to explain right now, and we know a lot about them. But I like having some of those rules, because then you don't fall into those traps of like, okay, well, they just painted that over with a broad brush because they weren't clever enough. So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is why it's such a thin line of when you bring technology and magic together, where as the author you have to go, okay, well, am I going to have technology solve this problem, or magic, or both? Or how would a society function with both integrating together without seeming lazy or Deus Ex Machina? So
yeah, and I think if you establish the rules up front, then I think you can kind of do whatever you want with them, as long as you don't break the rules, and then you're seen as clever. Because
So clever.
I think, because you have a longer time to sit there and think about the solution than everybody else does that's reading the book in real time, right? You have months and maybe even years to come up with a solution. So you want people to read, at least I want people to read my story and go, oh, Thayer is so clever. Like that was, I could have figured that out if I would have thought about it hard enough. And it's like, yeah, it took me 5 months to come up with that. So you may have been able to come up with it as well. So I want people to think I'm clever. And I think in order to do that, in order to trick people into thinking that I'm smart, I've got to give rules up front, and then use those rules how I need to solve problems.
all right, since we don't have a moderator, I guess we can just kind of take turns. So we've already talked about how they might contrast each other. Let's see.
Do you have the questions too?
I've kind of talked about quite a few of these going forward.
Yeah, we have.
I do have the questions on here. How might magic users neutralize weapons, and what might weapon wielders do to neutralize magic?
Yeah.
It's a good question. I think this tangentially hits on one of my big pet peeves in stories that I hear a lot. Like, you'll hear these stories where there's like some magical race of elves that used to rule the world, or maybe some beings or some wizards, and then it was like, but then they were hunted down and killed. I'm like, how were they hunted down and killed? They're like this ruling race of all-powerful magic wizards and like humans just were like, oh, we're gonna come get you with our swords. Like that, there's never a cool explanation to that. Like, I think there's one in like Thor 2, because it talks about the elves. Hellboy 2 has this old race of elves as well. There's a middle grade novel that I'm actually enjoying quite a bit right now, but it has like this old arcane group of like magical beings that were overthrown by humans, and I'm just like, that never would have happened. We would have been enslaved by you guys for eternity. There's no way. So
you need to find a significant enough form of tech that could stand up to that magic. Like in Star Wars, the war between the Jedi and the Mandalorians. The Jedis are super powerful. They've got their lightsabers. They've got the Force. They can like deflect energy blasters. So what do the Mandalorians do? They use physical munitions, because those turn to slag when they hit the lightsaber. And then the Jedi has shards and shrapnel in their face. And then the Mandalorians have a bit of advantage.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Think
coming
about
up
how
with
Star
like
Wars
yeah,
is magic and
how-
technology.
yeah, how do you level that playing field?
I think you got to give magic users a weakness. That's like there's like when you have like the sword and sorcery, you know, you have the big muscular barbarian, you know, going to kill the wizard. You're like, how is he going to do that? The guy's a wizard.
Yeah.
The wizard
That's because
is
they're a
either
glass
got-
cannon.
Yeah. So yeah, give him something, right? Like give him some weakness that you can exploit. Whether that weakness is hubris and they just can't possibly see themselves ever losing, or it is some kryptonite or some clever application like the Mandalorians, where you can actually exploit it. Because otherwise, you just anything you come up with just seems kind of a stretch, right? So I don't think it does you any favors to make your magic users invulnerable, invincible, you know, all powerful, whatever. There's got to be something you can exploit
Yeah.
that people can
So
kind of
no
rise
fun.
up and come up with something. Yeah, I like that. Some cool, clever application of technology to defeat a magic user, or some step change in magic to defeat, you know, someone with technology.
Yeah.
But I think you have to make it logical in a weird way, or it's not nearly as satisfying as it should be.
Yeah, we like it when things make sense. Somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like, you know, Sanderson does that in Mistborn when they're trying to overthrow the emperor, right? It's like, how are you possibly going to overthrow someone who is that powerful? And if you tease us with that for the entire book, the solution better be cool. And if it's not cool and it's just, you know, if it's just Deus Ex Machina, then it's not satisfying. So, and it's your world. You can build in those weaknesses. Like I always say people say think outside the box. Do not think outside the box. You built the box. Like build a cooler box that you can stay in and come up with cool solutions inside the box. If you got to go outside your box.
That's a great point.
Yeah, build a cooler box. If you got to go outside the box, your box isn't cool enough.
Restrictions encourage creativity.
Absolutely. Like, yeah, MacGyver your way through it. Like I purposely paint myself into a corner when I write to force myself to come up with clever solutions. So I will paint myself into a corner and be like, oh, how am I going to get out of this one? And then you can go back and tweak stuff, right? You can modify the box.
Modifying the box comes in editing in phase 2.
Exactly. Yeah,
Build your
but don't
box
go
while
outside
you
the
are
box.
writing, and then change it as needed when you are editing.
If you go outside the box, you get Indiana Jones 4, and no one wants to have Indiana Jones 4. So stay in your box. Build a cooler box. But I do love that. I love that concept of taking some sort of magical something and overthrowing sort of a technological tyrant, and vice versa.
Yeah.
I don't know why I like that so much, but that is really, really cool.
It's cool because it's like the underdog.
Well, it's kind of
Yeah.
whichever one you place is the underdog.
Mm-hmm.
And again, since in our heads we feel like magic and technology are completely separate, even though, as we talked about for a good while at the beginning, they aren't really all that different. But in our head, since they're so different, putting them against each other, it's like, ooh, cool. Again, going back to Star Wars, where I didn't even think about the fact that it's a magic system. It is. But
Sure.
having those interactions with the technology.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, like, so the main character in Techno Wizard, when he gets transported over there, he's in the middle of this prank, and I put it in near future, so it's like 2033. So they have everything we have, but it's just a little bit better. Like the drones are a little bit better, communication earpieces. The kid has like these glasses that are kind of like an Iron Man kind of HUD where he can control everything. And so he has this limited bag of stuff. I gave him a lot of stuff, but he has a limited bag of stuff when he gets transported over. And I've just, I thought about it for multiple years. But it's cool, all the different things you can do with just a drone, and just being able to, or like project an image from your phone, because they're going to think that's like a spirit, right? Or a ghost or something you can project from your phone. And so like all these huge problems he can solve with technology that we just have kind of lying around. And so he's constantly kind of going against monsters and powerful beings, and all he's got is a couple of drones, some voice recorders, a phone, and a projection. So that to me is a lot of fun when you can come up with clever applications of everyday stuff, but to them it's not every day. For us it's every day, and that's why it's kind of funny, because we're like, oh, I use this stuff all the time, but in this situation, in another world where none of this is familiar, you could really use it to some really cool effects, and then you kind of feel like you could have done it too. All right, what other?
I don't know if we have any questions left. I guess we can talk about ways.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful.
I would love to hear them. Let the audience moderate.
Go.
Okay. Brewmaker asks, what books do you recommend that merge technology and magic? Bonus points if it is middle grade, YA, or has space travel.
I'm going to sound like a dork for recommending my own stuff, so I'll try not to do that. You know what I think melds, this is not a book, this is a movie, and is Pacific Rim. So Pacific Rim melds magic and technology. The monsters are full-blown magic. Like, they come from a magical realm. There is, and then in a weird way, the most effective weapon in all is a sword. I don't know why they didn't start with a sword, but it ends up being the most effective weapon. The second Pacific Rim was a bit crazy. I love the first Pacific Rim, but it's kind of just a popcorn flick. It's not like super visceral and cerebral, but it's you want big huge robots fighting big huge magical monsters.
It's so fun.
Yeah, go no further. Ghostbusters is another one. That's a technological problem to a solution to a magical problem.
Does it count if they don't explicitly say it's magic, but like it's more of like, I think like anything that's soft sci-fi, where the technology isn't really explained, like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where like the Babel fish. I mean, I guess that's not really magic, but at the same time, I mean, if magic, you do potions, you do things with things natural, and like that's a fish that you put in your ear and you can understand everything. Like,
well, the trick to flying is to just miss the ground when you fall in Hitchhiker's Guide.
Yeah, so Hitchhiker's Guide, I feel like that is a little bit like magic and technology, but there isn't really a line. It's not really. It's definitely more on the sci-fi side of things.
Just all being goofy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some other middle grades. I might have to think on a little bit, but
I feel
I
like I had all these books in my head, and then.
Yeah. I'll have to think. We got any other questions from the audience while we think on this one?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Daniel JB asks, how to realistically have people be new or experiment with either magic or technology or both? How do they learn about them?
It's a good question, because I remember way back when I was in the first ever Writing Excuses retreat back in 2013 with Brandon Sanderson and Mary Robinette and Dan Wells. And Brandon was saying, he's like, when you think of magic, you only ever have people born with it or learn it at some school or from some wizard. He's like, that's the only two ways. He's like, is there a different way where someone can get magic? He's like, and my story at the time had like a different way. I was like, oh, I've got it. This is a story that I will never publish. It's one of those, it's like that I spent 7 years writing this thing thinking it was some masterpiece and it will never see the light of day. But I had people like, basically every generation, heroes would get voted by their race or whatever to be a hero. And so they were kind of elected to be a hero and be granted magic from on high. So, there's thousands of different iterations as far as going to some school. Harry Potter was not the first, and I'm sure will not be the last, as far as some kid going to school and learning magic from someone who already knows it, or it's passed down, or maybe it's forgotten and it's on some archaeological dig, when they discover something. I'm sure there's 1,000 different ones. You can have it come from some meteor that comes out of the sky.
That's actually how my sci-fi fantasy, how that starts, is
Boom.
with a meteor coming out of the sky. Wow.
Yeah.
Not an original idea, obviously.
But it's
Or like an
I don't know, it's
artifact.
hard. Yeah, an artifact, something there's like, Indiana Jones, again, it went super goofy, I think, with the fourth one, but like you could make an Indiana Jones one where he discovers some book of spells, right? That could be a super cool story as well. Or, some kid's got to go clean up the library and he's got detention and he stumbled across some old tome of some sort. There's ones where kids wander into old antique stores, and that's never ending story, right? Where he runs into an old bookstore.
Jumanji.
So, Jumanji's
where
another
the
one.
magic just happens to them accidentally.
Yeah, Jumanji gave me recurring nightmares for years. I didn't understand it was based on Jumanji until watching Jumanji again with my kids like 20 years later, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what this nightmare is based on. It's Jumanji. That's a twisted show when you really think about it.
The Janitors is a middle grade book series with fantasy in it, and it has the kids running across the janitor fighting magical monsters. And so he makes them his apprentices to help.
Doesn't Obert Sky have a book, Wizard for Hire, as well? It's like a modern day wizard kind of one.
Sounds familiar.
Might.
But yeah, I think there's tons of different ways I think you could probably stumble across. I think it's easier to stumble across magical learning than it is to stumble across technological learning.
Usually by the time you get to that point in the story, the protagonist has already learned how to use the technology. So it's not necessarily, unless you have like a time traveling into the future kind of a story.
Yeah, time travel, that could be a good one. Yeah, like maybe a time travel, someone in the future was messing around with time travel and accidentally transported back a device and plopped in your hand. So you don't necessarily know how it works, but you are now in sole possession, of this.
The big red
technological, button. Of the technological item. That's actually a pretty good idea. And then it'd be really cool if it was you in the future who did it, and it ended up back in your own hands because it was your house. It was you in the future at that same spot.
Fascinating.
It's a really good idea. Don't take that idea, anybody out there. I'm gonna write that book. But yeah, because technology, I guess you could use the technological artifact and not really know how it works. Just like you could use a magical artifact and not know how it works. You don't have to necessarily know. We use a phone and we don't know how it works. So,
Storybots can tell you.
Yeah. So I guess there's a bunch of different ways. At least that's all the ones I got off the top of my head.
Okay. Next question.
Keep them coming. Next question. Let's do this.
Okay. Next question. Deadpool Slaps asks, what are some good ways to explain why magic and sci-fi tech exist in the same world?
Well, I feel like technology, no matter what magic you have, you will have technology that's going along with it. I mean, if you have like, full fantasy, you're looking back at like medieval times with a magic system. They still have to build houses. They still have to, make swords and things like that. And so they're going to have technology, and maybe not everyone is able to access that magic system because you aren't born with it, or you don't have the artifact, or you didn't go to the special magic school that we just talked about. And so you have to have the technology alongside it. And so if you're bringing magic into sci-fi and you're looking at it there, well, there will still be people who don't have that magic system, and there will still be people who, need to build that technology. And so the technology and the magic can coexist, and it can make sense with very little explanation as why they both exist.
There's also like anything that's man-made is technology. So no matter what.
That plastic bottle came from oil in the ground. Right?
That's
technology. Books are technology. The way to make books is technology.
In fact, I would challenge you to say, I want you to come up with a society that has magic that doesn't have technology, because it doesn't exist. right? You're going to have some level of technology. Even
There'd be like
even
no clothes.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's possible, is what I'm saying. I think we are used to thinking a full, pure fantasy. Like, think of Lord of the Rings. There is still technology in Lord of the Rings. There's pulleys, there's fulcrums, there's levers, there's, you know, there's all of these things that's still technology. But again, we just have it in our brains that if it's medieval level technology, that's no technology. But like that's a level of technology. I just would challenge you that it would probably be much further along, and your magic would be much more integrated into technology should the magic actually exist. It would look a lot like magnetism today or electricity today. You would just weave it into all the stuff that you use, and no one would separate the two.
You could, if you want to have like a tech versus magic, you could have it be like a sci-fi with people from one planet where they use primarily technology.
Yeah, that's cool.
People from another planet, you've got your people who built their spaceships by hand and it all runs on electricity, and then you have your magic space elves that come along and everything is run by magic and songs. And
I mean, it's Avatar. That is Avatar, yeah, right there. Avatar, they control their connection to animals is magical, right? And then
it is scientifically explained.
Correct.
But to them, it's all spiritual and magical.
Right, and they can transfer life forces and do all this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can also have that be like on a planet, like different continents or just different tribes. Like they had an ideological split in the past, and these people just used the rocks, and these people used the magic sparkly things.
Yeah, they had access to some magical ore or something that, you know, other tribes didn't or other races didn't. And so they're much more reliant on it, and it's way more integrated into society. And so, but I think you would use it as a resource. I think you would use magic as a resource, just like we use technology as a resource. And different parts of the world have access to, you know, different materials, and that probably went into explaining why some of them were a lot more advanced for a long time, because they just had more access to stuff. And so you could do lots. You look at history, I'm sure you could use lots of examples from history about different societies being more advanced than not.
Like guns, germs, and steel. You've got your Western settlers and your natives.
What'd be interesting too is if like a different locations have different kinds of magic on a planet because of the geological or whatever. Like you know how different rocks are magnetic versus others. But like based off of the formations, they have a different composition that could potentially lead to different types of magic, and you have those magics clashing. These magics are making technology or affecting technology in a different way. So you have technologies that are growing up side by side, but they're slightly different because of the magic that affects them. That could be interesting.
We've just been gifting away story gold for 45 minutes, just shoveling it away.
I think the only way we could have a world with just magic and no technology is if the very first person that existed just could will anything into existence.
Right. That's all there was, which isn't a
That's
very
the
cool story.
only thing, is they just will everything.
So are we done? Is it 5:45? We out of time?
We have 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes. Oh, okay. All right. We go to the 50.
So we can answer some more questions and then talk about our stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, we probably can take one question and then sign off.
Yeah.
Okay, another question. Pike asks, how would magic materials integrate into a technology, such as you've got your magic rock that says grows crystals when you burn it? How would that result in technological advances and stuff? And how would you work that in?
I mean, think of a kyber crystal. That's exactly what they did for like a lightsaber. But if you wanted to like make it so it's like, you know, I would say if you had some sort of magic spell that all of a sudden made so food wouldn't spoil, how would that change, you know, logistics? How would that change war? How would that change? But again, who would it who would be advantaged by this, and who would be put off by this? Who would be victimized by this? So there's always someone that's profiting off of something, and there's always someone that's a victim to something. It's always going to close someone's business when you come up with some new, cool, technological or magical innovation. So I would just say it can almost be arbitrary. It doesn't even have to be that clever. Just whatever solution the magic solves or gives you, who would that put off and who would that benefit? And then that's going to give you enough conflict and tension, I think, to make a story.
And I'd say you can go from two different directions. You could go from, okay, this is a problem that technology can solve. How could I use magic to solve this problem? And then bring that artifact in to solve it. Or you could say, I have this artifact that I have in my head that is super cool. How could I, if I lived in this world, how would I use this artifact to influence technology? Like, you can go both ways, whether you have a problem that you want to solve or a type of technology that you want to integrate with magic. Start from one end or the other, and then think out a way. Put yourself into a corner in your really cool box and find a clever way out of it.
Yeah, you can also take the not only solving problems, but like, okay, what kind of problems can I introduce by adding in this magical or technological element?
Yeah, I would think, what are the unintended consequences?
Yeah.
So it's going to solve something, and that's why, like, think of, what is that movie with Will Smith? I Am Legend, right? It was supposed to be the cure for cancer and ended up being the zombie virus. So you're going to have something that's going to solve something, but then, like, what are the most horrific unintended consequences that thing could cause? And then, boom, you got yourself a story.
Ta-da!
Ta-da!
Well, I guess it's time to sign off. Who wants to go first?
Yes.
You can go.
Okay, so
Oh,
I'm Drea Griffin. What? Wait, which one of us?
I pointed. You can't tell who I'm pointing to?
Point. Yes, I
You
saw
did.
you point.
Yep.
Drea, you.
I think it's all reversed on my screen. I mean, you are on my right, and yeah. Anyway,
Sorry, Drea, you're up. Yep.
me. Okay, I'm Drea Griffin. My website is dreagryphon.com. That's where you can go find all of my links to everywhere I am on the web. I have an Etsy store where you can buy my awesome designs. Early bird gets the worm. And that's Drea Griffin Design. This is my last panel for this conference, so I won't be around on any other panels. And sometimes I stream on Twitch. I will do art or game, or sometimes you get to sit with me while I do chores. So you can follow me there if you want. That's me.
I'll go next. I'm Natalie Brianne. I have a book that's coming out next month, called Constantine Capers the Pennington Perplexity. It's about a detective with amnesia. Every day he wakes up and can't remember the day before. So he has some interesting ways of trying to solve that problem. You can find me at my website, nataliebrianne.com, and all of my links to social media are on the very front page. Also, next week, I'm starting a online scavenger hunt / decoding cipher thing. So if you're into like solving mysteries and riddles and ciphers and stuff, there will be a giveaway at the end. This is leading up to my launch. So if you are interested in that, on Monday, I will be posting on my blog and on Instagram the information for how you can participate and whatnot. Should be great fun. Also, I will be on a panel next hour called Humor in the Fantastic. So
Awesome. Mike Thayer, you can go to mike-thayer.com or thetechnowizardbooks.com. So this is my first book, Passes Avalon. So book 1 and book 3 were Whitney Award finalists, which was pretty cool for middle grade. About a boy from Montana gets transported to a different world but still has cell phone signal back to Earth. And then My traditionally published book, The Double Life of Danny Day, about a kid who lives every day twice. That is coming out June 15th. You can go pre-order it right now on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or anywhere fine books are sold. So there you go.